Hello, everyone, and welcome to the San Jose, California real estate market analysis for March of 2023. Now, this is the opportunity for us to sort of get together, collect our thoughts, take a look at what's been going on in San Jose, specifically comparing it to the same time next year, but then also looking at the data that we've been accumulating over the past few months to see if we can't get a good idea of where the market might be going, in addition to seeing exactly where we are. So let's go ahead and jump in and take a look. As we always do, we're going to go ahead and start with the active listings. This is the total number of homes on the market right now. So for you buyers, that's the number of homes you have to choose from. For you sellers out there, that is your competition. How many homes are out there vying for the attention of the same buyers that you are? Now, a few interesting pieces of data to pull out of this. First, we have a decline, obviously, from the same time last year. Last year, we had 527 homes on the market in San Jose versus 469 homes in March of 2023. Now, that's an 11% decline from the same time last year. But what's also interesting about this is that it represents 1 month of inventory. So if the inventory froze where it was right now, and whatever the number of homes sold this month stayed the same, how many months would it take to sell off everything we've got? 1 month. That is a ridiculously low number. According to national numbers, a balanced market is 5 to 7 months of inventory. Here in our local market, I actually think the balance is a little lower than that. I think it's probably 4.5 to 5.5 or 6 months worth of inventory. But no matter how you slice it, no matter what metric you use, we have ridiculously low months of inventory currently available in San Jose, which indicates to me that despite the fact we have all these other influences that are pushing the market towards buyers, it would not take very much. If any level of increase occurred in terms of buyer participation, we would instantly be in a seller's market. So I think that's kind of interesting, something to keep in your mind as we read all the other headlines relating to things that might influence buyers one direction or another. Now, if we take a look at trends, try to figure out where things have been versus where we're going, we can see we peaked back in July of 2022 at 1,113 homes on the market. If we take a look at what happened between February and March of last year, we did see an increase between February and March. That is what we expected. This is what I anticipated when we talked last month about San Jose's numbers, because that's what seasonally happens, right? As we get into the season, which tends to now happen in March, we start to see inventory increasing. And then, of course, we see it peak at what is normally considered the heart of summer, July, and then it declines after that. So what did we see last year between March and April? We saw another pretty big increase. My guess is we'll see an increase, but just like we saw a very small increase between February and March of 2023 compared to the same time last year, I think we will see a very small increase between March and April of this year as well. So again, interesting numbers relating to month of inventory, but we are not seeing the kind of inventory growth that would kind of push that months of inventory out, right? We're just not seeing that tend to happen. So my anticipation for total number of active listings or the inventory in San Jose for April is we will see it increase, but not by much. It'll be a relatively small number. Now let's go ahead and look at new listings. These are homeowners who decided to put their home on the market. So this is the month that their home actually appeared on the MLS and was available for folks to potentially make an offer on it. We can see a big decrease in new listings, down 37.5% from the same time last year. Last year, we had 1,044 homes listed. This year, we had 652 homes listed. If we look at the trend, we can see that between February and March of last year, we saw an increase. We saw a similar increase in terms of how each month related to the other between February and March. But we can also see that it definitely didn't offset that enough for the overall inventory numbers to see a big boost. From March to April of last year, we actually saw a decline. Now, remember, March is sort of that border month for us right now. And it's just March of 2022 for right now, because that's when interest rates started to go up. Back in March of 2022, that's when it all started to hit in terms of increasing interest rates. So that would be the beginning of a decline in the amount of activity we saw in the marketplace as buyers stepped away because of higher interest rates. But the response of sellers wouldn't have been that instantaneous in terms of deciding not to go on the market to potentially get their homes sold. So what's interesting is Between March and April, we saw a decline last year. If we see the same thing this year, I think that presents us with an interesting scenario where, in theory, the peak of folks adding their homes to the market should be this month, right? If we take last year as an indicator, if that is in fact the peak, then this is going to be a very interesting summer season, particularly if we do see anything that pushes buyers more into the marketplace. So I think that this particular number is open for quite a bit of potential disruption this year because of what's going on in markets. We'll keep an eye on it and see where it's going. But if I had to guess, I would say we will see a decrease in the number of homes listed in April in San Jose. But because of things I'm seeing in the market, I don't think it would be much. I think it might be flat. It could be very close to the same number in April as we saw in March. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw new listings added to the San Jose market be between 640 and 670. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, I'm obviously, I don't have the crystal ball fine-tuned usually that well, but that's what my gut's telling me. That's what I think we might see. So we'll see how on or off I am when we get those numbers for April. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at total number of homes sold. Now, obviously, these are homes that sold in this month, which means that the month prior or the month before that even is probably when the offer was accepted. So in other words, if your home closed escrow in March, you probably accepted an offer on it in January or February, since it takes 30 to 45 days for a home to close escrow. Now, in terms of comparing this to last year, in March of 2022, we saw 787 homes actually sell in San Jose, and that's down 42.8% to 450 homes in March of 2023. Between February and March, we saw a pretty big increase from 303 homes to 450 homes. And if we look at the same time last year, February to March, a huge jump. So while we definitely saw the same thing, we definitely saw an increase when thinking of it in context of the month before, it absolutely was not on par at all with the change between February and March of last year. That is a giant jump between February and March of last year, which didn't peak until April at 844 homes sold. So in terms of anticipation, what do I expect to see in April? I expect to see homes increase in sales again, but to the point where it's almost flat. Where I'm not expecting to see 100 or 200 more homes sell in April. I am expecting to see a handful more homes sell in April. So I don't think we're going to see some big jump. We didn't get the big jump between February and March that we got between February and March of last year. And I don't think we're going to get anything on par with what we saw in March and April of last year. So again, relatively flat performance, a handful, maybe a dozen or two more homes selling in April, but I wouldn't expect to see more than that. All right, next. And again, this is a chart I'm working on. This is the pending sales view, and I feel like pending sales is worth looking at. Now, pending sales is down 44.3%. What does pending sales even mean? It means that the sellers of a home accepted an offer in this month. So it gives you a few things. It gives you an understanding of how many homes went under contract. What does that tell us about what we might see in terms of closed escrows in the following month? But then also gives us a point of reference to figure out, well, okay, if we saw, say in March of 2023, 510 homes go pending, and then in April we only saw 400 sell, what does that mean? Does that mean escrows are taking longer and they're just not closing in the following month? Or does it mean that more properties fell out of escrow in that month? So that actually is a separate number I could potentially start tracking, where we add a slide or add a point of data relating to how many properties don't close escrow because they fell out, right? But even then, we'd want to start asking, well, why? Most of the time it's for financing, but it might be a way to clue into more challenges being faced by buyers relating to financing than in past times. So. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a quick look here at the pending numbers. We can see it's down 44.3% from the same time last year. In March of 2022, the number of homes went pending was 916. We had 510 homes this year. If we look at what happened between February and March of last year, there was definitely an increase. We saw an increase here as well. And then we also saw a decrease in April, between March and April of last year. And I would expect to see the same thing, so that we see March sort of as the peak in terms of total number of homes that go pending. Now, if we sort of graph sold and pending together, pending is green. So that's the number of accepted offers. And blue is the homes that actually sold in that month. It's always interesting to see pending be higher, and then the following month see the decline that represents, right? So if you take a look at August of 2022, you can see that we had pending homes kind of peak there. And then we saw the following month more of an increase, but we didn't see as many homes sell as we saw go pending. But then we still continued to see a decline in pending in October, between September and October, that doesn't really reflect those closing in that following month, which indicates that those were periods when we were seeing more homes falling out of escrow. Now, in terms of what we're looking at right now, from February to March of last year, we saw pending homes jump, right? And that's the numbers we saw last time, or in the chart above, and with a much more subdued increase between February and March of this year. But we're also seeing a corresponding uptick in pending, which we also saw last year. So, but again, not as steep of a curve. So you see how steep these curves is? One reason why I want to include this is so you get more of a visual representation of how dramatic these changes are, and see how much subdued these are, and see how solds are converging with pending. So it's kind of interesting to see these numbers. And in my estimation, given what we've seen in the past relating to pending, I would expect pendings to decline a bit. And because of the months of inventory that we've talked about in San Jose, I think it's interesting to consider the possibility that we could see this be a little bit more of an interesting selling season as inventory continues to drop and but which is going to happen first? Is the inventory going to drop enough to catch up with the current demand of buyers and therefore start to boost prices? Or is the number of buyers going to continue to drop enough so that drop in inventory really never catches up or falls down to the level of inventory that buyers demand, which would then keep prices relatively low? It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Next, average original list price. And this is one where we try to use it as an opportunity to get a look inside of the heads of sellers. This is not what the home was listed for at the time it sold. This is what it was listed for the day it went on the market. So this is what sellers were calibrated to. When they put their home on the market, this is what they were told it could potentially sell for, or what they believed it should potentially sell for. Now, this number was up 5.3% from the same time last year, which is actually a big improvement from past months, where folks in San Jose, often to the tune of double digits, thought their home was worth quite a bit more on average than the same time last year. We can see that in March of 2023, the number stands at 1,444,000. Last year, that number was 1,372,000. And overall, you can see we had an increase from January of 2022. We saw sort of a gentle increase all the way up until July, August, and September, with a little bit of a dip in October, as we normally do in the winter months when things tend to sell for a little bit less. But then once we were past December and into January, and then February, obviously last month, there's been a little bit of a decline. I'm not anticipating seeing this number go up a whole bunch. I think one reason why we saw the average list price go up in February was because folks were just anticipating that, right? In other words, if you were going to sell, you were probably listing your home in February and March. And I think that's when you tend to see those expectations boosting these numbers a little bit. Now, keep that in mind, 5.3% average increase. And where do I expect this number to go? I expect it to remain relatively flat in the coming months, and we'll see. But I also expect to see an increase in the number of homes that get their prices reduced in coming months, simply having to deal with the fact that homes aren't selling for expected prices. Now let's look at average sales price. And this is what homes actually sold for. And we can see that, look at how much down it was in February, and March is actually a peak. Now remember, this also represents sales that happened where the offer was accepted in January and February, because remember, it takes 30 to 45 days for these escrows to close. This makes sense to me because we tend to see the first big rush of new homes listed happen in February, and those most desirable homes, the best in class, I guess you could call it, at different price points, those homes are going to sell first, kind of regardless of where they fall in the price ranges. And I think that's one reason why we saw this average sales price jump in March of 2023. But overall, this number is down 9.2%. Now remember, San Jose original list price was up 5.3. Average sales price is down 9.2. So on average, sellers are not calibrated to what the market will support, right? And that's going to be, there's so many submarkets in San Jose. It's going to be a different story depending on where your home is. So just understand that this is definitely the 1,000-foot view for San Jose. We're obviously not taking into account submarkets within San Jose that would perform very differently if you took a closer look at them. Now, in terms of finding some trends here, it's not too hard to spot. We can see that we peaked in April of 2022 at $1,574,000 in terms of sales price. And then the trend has not been hard to spot. It has been declining right up until March, where it got that boost, that beginning of the year boost, or at least beginning of the season boost, right? As soon as we get into February and March is when you start to see these things increase. And I think that's just representative of what happens at this time of year. In terms of where do I think things are going to be going over the coming months, I think at the very beginning, March, April, we tend to see the prices go up a little bit as homes that were, again, best in class at different price points get sold first and quickly, right? They're not going to be languishing on the market for a long time. In some areas, they're going to sell right away because they're well priced or because those areas are ridiculously desirable, or they were well priced to start and they simply got snatched up as soon as they came onto the market. Next, percent of list price from March of 2023. We can see that last year at this time, the number stood at 111.6. That's 11.6% over asking price. This year, we're at 102.3. So that is pretty good. We are on average, this is now the second month in a row where we have seen homes selling on average for over asking price. And that implies a level of competition that has increased over the last 2 months. With getting 2.3% over asking price, that definitely shows a trend of homes being sold with multiple offers. And again, I think this fits the example I gave on the last slide relating to homes being best in class. We're at the very beginning of the hot market for 2023. We're seeing buyers and sellers jumping in now. And the sellers that did jump in, even though there were not as many of them as we might have hoped to start off this season, there are still homes in there that are great. And remember, there are tons of homes that have stayed on the market, that have been on the market for a very long time. So we've had this infusion of homes at the start of the market that were just very desirable. And I think that this reflects that there will be competition for those kinds of homes. So again, while on average, we're seeing 102.3, we're still seeing a lot of homes that are sticking on the market for much longer. Now, I'll be doing a separate video for price reductions. I'll either be building it in with the Santa Clara County review or I'll be giving it its own video. So make sure to check that out. So check out, which are both potentially pending coming on the channel. So if you want a subscriber to YouTube for me on YouTube, please feel free to do that. And you'll get a notation, obviously, when those videos come out. So where do I expect this to go? Well, if we follow the trend, March and April, we're kind of bucking it of what's been going on historically. But between February and March of last month, we saw an increase. Then in March and April, we saw a decrease. It wouldn't surprise me if we see the same or lower numbers. If this does end up being the peak for this, then we've hit it, right? 102.3 is going to end up being the peak for San Jose. And from here, it just goes down as it did last year. But remember the financing situation. Remember the interest rates. So that absolutely hit the market last time. We're obviously also still living with that now, but I wouldn't expect as sharp a decline as we saw last year as the market responded to those interest rate changes. We're already in those interest rate changes. So if anything, I would expect us to see a peak at 102.3 and then a gentle decline back to about 100 or just below it at 99%, but no dramatic changes one direction or another would be my guess. All right. Next, days on market. We can see yet another month where it has declined, and we've now sort of broken that little ceiling that I call the 1 month ceiling, because I think psychologically, sellers saying that to themselves that their home has been on the market for a month has much more impact than saying 20 days or saying 30 days, because it's a point at which you start to think, well, this is a milestone. We've hit a month. I should definitely start thinking about what we're doing wrong. Particularly if when you ran the numbers, you were told that the average days on market in your local area was 15 days, 20 days, 25 days. If you start to reach that number, you start to wonder what you're doing wrong. Right now, we sit at 25 days in March of 2023. It was 11 days last year in March of 2022. If we look at the trends, we can see that between February and March, it was very, very flat. Not very, very flat this year. Again, and I think a lot of that has to do with pent-up inventory that's been sitting around forever that finally has started to get sold, in addition to the new listings that got sold. So overall, representing a overall drop in the average days on market. What do I expect for next month? I would expect the same. I would expect to see a bit of a decline in days on market. There was a decline last year. Honestly, I think that in terms of days on market, I think it's hard to use last year as a model since things were so different the same time last year. But I would guess we start to see another little bit of a dip, maybe down to 20 days, between 20 and 25 days. But I don't think we go much further down than that. I think that's sort of where things bottom out. And then from there, I think we start to see increases in total days on market. Overall, though, between March of 2023 and March of 2022, that's a 127% increase in days on market, which is a pretty substantial increase in the number of days it takes to get a home sold in San Jose. Next, let's take a look at San Jose price reductions. This represents the total number of homes on the market. So the total inventory that had price reductions. And right now that number stands at 24.4%. That's an increase from last month's 20.3%. Why did we see an increase? Because I believe there were sellers out there who had reached this point. They've maybe been on the market for more than a month. They see the new hot market coming and they want to be competitive. They want to get sold. So I think that's why we saw an uptick in the number of homes that actually reduced their prices. So the lesson to learn from this is to price your home correctly. I know I've told tons of horror stories in a variety of videos over the last few months where we looked at specific homes that had been on the market for, say, 270 days, 300 days. And if they had simply priced their home correctly from the beginning, they would have made way more on the house than they could ever hope to make now because of the declines in home prices that we've seen. So it's a sad story. It's a shame because if those numbers had been picked correctly right at the beginning, they absolutely would have sold, or at least by now, for far more than they would be forced to reduce their price to now to be competitive in today's market. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in selling your home, those are things you need to know up front. Make any real estate agent tell you exactly why they think a home should be listed at a certain price. Make them prove it with numbers. And if you have picked some number that you think is way out there and your real estate agent just says, yeah, let's go for it, make them prove it. They have access to all the tools needed to do a much more intelligent statistical analysis of the scenario to help inform you with data on what makes sense relating to your local market. Now, let's say you're not interested in selling. Let's say you just want the best tool in the world to keep track of your greatest asset, which is your home. I've just started subscribing to a new tool for my customers that doesn't just tell you what your home is worth at any given time. It helps you track all your options and understand how much equity you have in the home and what you might be able to do with that equity and understand what the market around your home is doing. After years and years of searching for a great tool for my sellers and for just potential clients who may have no interest in selling but just want really good home information, I think this is it. So head on over to soldbyrobert.com. It's right at the top of the page on the left-hand side. It'll just ask you for your address. It'll immediately give you your estimated home value, but then it'll also give you the opportunity to sign up to get tons and tons of data. And I promise you, you will not only be very impressed with the amount of new things you're going to learn about your options relating to your home and its equity, but you're going to find this to be useful information that you're going to be checking out every month and being thankful for having access to it. So feel free to check that out again at soldbyrobert.com. Now, as always, the goal is to leave you with more information on the table than I take up on your time. I hope I've accomplished that this time. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and I'll talk to y'all next time.